Hi, I'm Aiman, and welcome back to one of my auto repair videos. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to remove and replace the brake pads on a 10th generation Honda Civic, which applies to 2016 to 2021 models. So, the start of this video assumes that you've already taken off the tires. If you don't know how to do that, there's going to be a segment at the end of the video that shows you how. So we're going to take a 12mm socket, and we're going to loosen the top bolt, but we're going to fully remove the bottom bolt so that it can swing out. Okay, righty tighty, lefty loosey. Alright, so that's loosened. I'm just going to loosen it more, not all the way though. The bottom is what really matters for swinging it out. Okay. And so that's what the bolt looks out when you take it out. Okay. So now we should be able to just pull on this, and that allows us to swing it up. If you really want to secure it, you can take a bungee cord and then tie it, but it's okay just like this. Okay, so now we're going to take the brake pads out, the old brake pads. So you want to take out these brake springs. Then you want to either try to pry them out with your hand, and it looks like these ones are fairly easy to pry out. So you can just wiggle them out. Or if it's really rusty, or if it's really in there, and I'll show you that in just a bit, you can take a screwdriver and you can pry them out. And your best place for leverage should be at the very tips of the brake pads. See if you can stick a screwdriver in there, or maybe on the bottom. Let's try. Okay. And then let's go to the top. Well, if not, then you just use leverage and pull it out from the bottom. There we go. So these are the old brake pads. We could still get some more use out of these brake pads. There still is a bit more to them. But the reason that we're replacing them now is because while driving, my dad feels some vibrations when he's braking, especially downhill. And another thing is he doesn't want this issue to continue until we hear noise, because at that point, that means that the rotor could be worn away, and we don't want it to get to that point. In addition, replacing the brake pads is free because they're under warranty. If you're curious, that warranty is from AutoZone. It's not from the Honda dealership. So if you want to get free brake pads, then go to AutoZone. But while we're here, we're going to take the brake pads out on the other side. So, let me get my Milwaukee. And I'll demonstrate the screwdriver again. So this one's a bit easier for leverage because now I get to push the wrench onto the right side. Whew. And as you can see, it's very tight in there. Oh. Alright, it's loosened. Let's do the bottom one. Sorry I can't show you. This is a kind of a terrible camera angle. But there we go. So let's swing this out. And if it's very hard to take it out, again, you can use a screwdriver to give you extra leverage. Maybe it would help you, jam out the caliper if there's any rust holding it in. And there we go. So with that swung out, we're going to take out the pins, or the springs rather, and we'll try using a screwdriver to pry it out. Okay, so just give us a little gap. As you saw before, I just pushed this a bit so that we could get a gap to insert the screwdriver. And now it should be easier for us to take out. there we go. Okay, so I didn't even need to pry it out. As you can see, it just fell out. So now we're going to go to AutoZone and get these replaced with new brake pads. My dad went to AutoZone and he got these replacement brake pads. Now, they didn't come in the box because they just replaced the box that my dad took the old pads in. So these are gold pads, and they come with replacement sliders, or the replacement plates that go here. If we got the platinum version, we would got replacement pins and replacement, and also extra grease. But since we didn't get grease, we just have some grease here. So we're going to replace these, and you're going to first want to, since we have these new plates, we're going to take out the old ones. And my old screwdriver is not there anymore, so I'll just have to use this really thick one. So you're going to want to use a screwdriver and pry out those pins. And set them aside. In this case, we will have to reuse the old spring pin, so just keep that in hand. So what we're going to do now is we're going to install the brake pads, and the next few steps can be done in whatever order you want. It's either we put the sliders on and then we move back this piston, or we do the piston and then we put the sliders on. It's up to you. We're going to do the piston first. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this tool right here. I've done a video on it before, but it basically just pushes out, and this is used to make the piston retract. And so if you're interested, again, go check out that video on it. There's another method to do it using a C-clamp and a old brake pad. I also cover in that video if you don't have one of these tools, so go check that out if you don't have this tool. But just keep in mind, when you retract the piston, the brake fluid is going to come back out. So normally I would tell you to remove the cap from the brake fluid reservoir. However, in our case, because we know that the old brake pads weren't worn down as much, that means that the piston hasn't extended very far, which means that there's not a lot of fluid that can come back out. So in our case, we're not going to worry about it. We know that it's not going to overflow. The biggest risk here is the brake fluid overflowing. Hold on. All right, so let's insert the tool and let's expand it. The reason we're expanding the piston is so that we can give enough room for the brake pads to fit in between. All right, all the way. Okay, so at that point, I'm going to release them. Take it out, and now you can see that the piston is fully retracted. So at this point, we can install the new brake pads. Wait, look. Thank you.
Leave it at the front?
Yeah, thank you. Have a great day.
You too.
We got Amazon delivery. Okay. That's funny. We just got an Amazon delivery just now from a regular car. And my dad got me a sports headband to wear so that my hair doesn't get in the way. Okay. Alright, I'll just get this on real quick. How do I look? Alright. So, one thing you want to look out for while doing this is you have to make sure you use the right brake pad on the right side. The brake pads that go on the interior of the car, or rather, they're facing the inside of the wheel well, have this little tab facing out. So, ideally, you would look at your old brake pad and compare. Whoa, I thought that was a chicken. And you want to compare which one has the tab on the top, or on the has the tab facing the interior. So in our case, we know that the tab should always be facing the top. So we know this is going to be the interior tab, the interior brake pad for the driver's side. This one's going to be the interior brake pad for the passenger side. On the other side, they look pretty interchangeable because they're pretty symmetrical. So that shouldn't matter too much. Okay. Let's take our sliders out and install them. So we want to make sure that the brake pads, the new brake pads, can slide cleanly on these sliders. So you can either grease them right now or you can grease them when they're already on the their platform. All right, so we're going to install these. And they're just going to go on like so. It might be a bit hard for you to install, but as you can see, it goes on just like that. Same thing on the top. Other way. And there we go. Next, we're going to put grease to help the brake pads slide. And I've seen some people put the grease directly on the plates, but instead we're going to put it directly on the brake pads instead, and then install them. So just put a bit on top. Is there any coming out? Okay. All right. A bit on the top and a bit on the bottom. Okay. And now we're going to install this. Make sure it's in the correct orientation. And let's see. It'd probably be easier for me to do it from the top first and then pivot to the bottom. So, all right. I have it in the top. Now I'm going to swing it in and push it on the bottom. Oh, maybe I'll have to push this a bit more to get a better angle. So yeah, it does take a bit of fiddling, but eventually you're able to get it in. And due to that fiddliness, I've seen some people just just replace the pads and not even replace the metal plates. It probably doesn't make a big difference to replace those plates because you end up putting grease anyway, but I mean, it could be rusty, that could affect it. It's up to you. But just because they give us the plates, we're going to replace them anyway. Okay, we're going to do the same thing on the other side and make sure it's in the correct orientation. Actually, yes, this should be the way it is. Tab is on the top facing the interior, and this is how it's oriented when it goes inside. Okay, so let's put some grease on. On the back, it's going to be a bit harder, so have some patience. I'm going to start from the top because it would be easier for me to swing it to the bottom. Okay, and if the top doesn't work, then we can try doing it from the bottom. Or we could just, be trying to break in the plate to make it easier to fit in. But like I said, this does take a bit of fiddling. There we go. Whew. And now we have the interior brake pad on. Okay, we're going to put these brake springs on. One of them goes in this bottom hole, right here. And another one goes at the top. So before we continue, it's important for me to say that, especially if you have an older car, you want to make sure that hold on. How do I describe it? These slider pins still work properly. since this is not an old car, we're not too worried about it. But ideally, you would take them out, you would take out the side bolts, and you would put grease on them, and you would put back in. Something else I can mention is that since I've seen some people put grease on the outside of the brake pad, on the entirety of it. Not even just, you know, the points where the caliper contacts with it. They just slaughter it over the entire thing, which I don't understand why they do that. At least logically, like, grease acts as a lubricant, so it makes sense that it's where the brakes slide. And even just for being sure, you could put it where the metal contacts. But because, you know, grease is a lubricant, it doesn't make sense that you would put it where it really would have no effect on the outside of the brake pad. But I mean, if you feel comfortable doing it, go ahead. But we don't really need to put any any grease on the outside of the brake pad. Okay. So let's swing this over. Make sure that it's lined up. You see that? You can push this in if it helps you align it. And then insert it. For now, because we're going to work on the passenger side, we're not going to torque it yet, but we're going to torque it later. So let's go over to the other side. There's a lot of stuff to have. Okay, so we have all my equipment here. Let me retract this. And you don't have to put grease on the slide pin. It's not required. It's just if it doesn't move properly, then you should put grease on it. Okay. So let's expand this out. Funny story about that whole grease on the outside of the brake pads thing. So my dad was in line at AutoZone, and there was a guy there who was exchanging his brakes. And the brakes had grease all over the outside of them. And the manager at the desk, she was like, "Oh my God, who put all this grease all over it? Why? Why would you do that?" And so, because of that, he's always remembered not to put grease on the outside of the brake pads, because why? Why would you do that? I mean, if you have a legitimate reason for that, let me know in the comments down below. Maybe I could learn something new. Maybe there is a reason. But logically, it just doesn't make sense to me because grease acts as a lubricant, and it just doesn't make sense to be a place where nothing slides across it. Okay, so as you can see, the caliper piston is fully retracted. And so now we can install these metal plates after we take out these ones. I have no idea where, oh, it went there. Okay, so let's put it back on. All right, there's one to go. And then one down here. All right, make sure that's fully in place. And we'll take our brake pads and we'll install them. Okay, so let's do the interior first. Where'd my grease go? Let's put some grease on it. And fiddle around with it to insert it. Okay. Sorry if my big head gets in the way. This might not be the ideal camera angle, but I'll try my best for you to get a good look. Okay, let's try from the bottom first. If you're having a lot of trouble with getting the pad in, something you can do to make it easier is to turn the steering wheel so that it faces out a bit more and gives you a better angle to see what you're working with. You know, especially in the dark, it can be a bit hard. The issue that we're trying to face is that, you know, especially with the new plates, it can tend to bend inward a bit. And so it's hard to actually fit the plate in, to fit the pad in when this bent side is preventing its entry. And that's why I say a lot of this is just fiddling around in trying to really get a good angle. And you know, one way you can try to do it is try to, as you're pushing it, you can try to push it in, bend it, so that next time you try to insert it, it's a bit easier. But sometimes auto repair just isn't easy. Excuse the pun, but sometimes it requires elbow grease. Whew, I finally got that happened, and right on time. So we're gonna do the exterior one, and this one should be a bit easier because it's facing the outside. So we're gonna put some grease on it, and now we actually get to see what we're working with. Although this one's kind of hard just because of the bracket in front of it. Okay, so you see what I'm doing right now is as I'm pushing this in, I'm also pushing this tab in, and that will give me the right angle, hello, to insert it. So I'm twisting it, I'm pushing it, and let's try from the front, from the top, and let's see how the bottom goes. Let's try pushing the bottom in, and there we go. A lot of fiddling, but as you can see, we finally got the pads in. We're gonna take our spring pins, we're gonna put them on. Again, sorry for the darkness. Sometimes time just doesn't fit. We didn't want to do this earlier in the day because it's extremely hot. For some reason, New England summers have gotten like scorching earth levels of temperature, and I'm not used to it. But with this nice rain that we're getting, it's feeling a bit cooler. So now what we're going to do is, everything seems set. Like I said before, if your slide pins don't slide properly, you want to grease them up, but we're going to be okay with that. We're going to tilt this back down, line it up, and screw it back in. Okay, sorry about that. We had to take a break because it started raining heavily. But now we're back. We're going to torque the caliper slide bolts, and they require a torque of 25 foot-pounds, at least according to the resources that we found online. So we're going to use our Milwaukee first. Not a required step, but we're just using this because it's rated for 20 to 25 foot-pounds of torque. Okay. And then we're going to go back with a torque wrench. This is what you should do, and tighten it manually. Alright, so that click indicates that it's torqued properly. Same thing on the bottom. So that click indicates that the bottom is torqued properly. If you find it hard to torque it properly, actually, you probably do need to do this because it's hard to get an angle without tilting. You're going to need to tilt the wheel to the right so that you get an angle which you can actually torque the bolts. So we're going to go to the other side, and we're also going to turn the steering wheel to the left so that we can torque it. Okay. Alright, so we're on the driver's side. Let's tighten them. And let's go in with our torque wrench and fully tighten it. Alright. Alright, so both the top and the bottom are torqued to 25 foot-pounds. The next step here is to put the tire on, torque it properly, and then you want to go inside of your car and you want to pump the brakes a few times, just to break the brakes in. Okay, and obviously to put the tires back on, you're going to need to straighten the wheel again. Always important to make sure that you torque your lug nuts properly. It's to 80 foot-pounds. If you don't torque it properly, you can risk your wheel falling off. And that is exactly what happened to my brother Oscar. He was working with one of our uncles, and they didn't care about torquing it properly. They just tightened it until they could tighten it no more. And then Oscar went on the highway, and what do you know? His tire spun off. And he almost, I don't know, he could have died. So just make sure you torque that properly. And not to end on a terrible note, if you want to see how the car looks like when it's buttoned up, continue watching. But this is pretty much where we're going to end the video. Like I said before, if you don't know how to take off the tire, the clips are also going to be later in the video. But for now, I'm Aiman, and thanks for watching. Today I showed you how to remove and replace the front brake pads on a Honda Civic 10th generation, 2016 to 2021. And I hope it helped you. Please like or comment, subscribe, and look at other videos on EyeOnAiman, especially the auto repair videos and the videos on this Honda Civic. Yesterday I was working on Oscar's car, his Honda Insight, and we were replacing the spark plugs, so if you're interested, go check that out, and I'll see you there. But for now, I'll see you next time. But we're going to put the tire back on, so if you want to see that, continue watching. It's kind of hard when it's spinning. There we go. Okay. So right now I'm just hand threading these to make sure that it doesn't fall off when I let go. But when you tighten them, you want to make sure that you torque them, when you tighten them in a star pattern. That's to evenly distribute the force as you're tightening the lug nuts. Okay, and lastly, our lock nut. And now we're going to tighten and torque. Okay, let's tighten it. Okay. Star pattern, like I said. Make sure we get that star pattern. And of course, before we can actually torque it, we have to put it down on the ground. Also, while I'm here, it's important to mention, I'm screwing this in using the lowest setting on my impact driver. Don't use your impact driver to screw it in on the max setting, because the impact driver can deliver a lot of torque. You don't want to over torque these. So just don't use this on the maximum setting. All right, let's get the passenger side on. I'll have to line it up a bit. go. All right, let's tighten it. Okay, so now with our lug nuts on, now with both of our tires on, we're going to lower the car, and then we're going to torque the lug nuts. All right, so now I can show you where the jack point is. Get a bit of a better angle. I'm going to reach in and grab the jack stand. Okay. Give it a bit higher. Let's take it out. All right, let's get the one on the passenger side. Okay, and before we release the jack, we're gonna remove our choke brake. And while we are taking that out, we're gonna take the one on the passenger side out too. Right. Let's lower it down. Alright, let's go to the passenger side. Okay, so I found my jack point. I'm just going to raise this as much as I can just to see where it is when it's raised. Okay. Alright. And as you can see in the back, the wheel is lifted, which is why it's a good idea to remove the brick before you do this. But now that this is lifted, you're going to reach in and grab the jack stand and take it out. Okay. Let's lower it. This time my plan is to do it slowly. Yeah, that's about the speed we're going for. Alright. Now that our car is on the ground, we're going to torque all the lug nuts. Okay, I'm going to torque the lug nuts using this digital torque wrench. I've done a video on this if you're interested in buying it. It's pretty nifty. I have to calibrate it first. We're going to use an extension so we don't scratch up the car. Some people say this interferes with the torque, but you know, I don't think it has a big effect. So, I want to line this up, and we're going to tighten it. Tighten it as much as you can, and let me just make sure that it's still on, because sometimes it turns off randomly. Well, not randomly, it turns off when you leave it idle. And what right now we're doing is listening for a sound and a light turning on. Because this is taking a while, I'm not going to do all 5 of these on camera. We'll probably just speed through it. But you hear that sound? Alright, it's red, which means that it's torqued to 80. Alright, so the one that we did was on the top right. We'll go to the bottom. Okay, so it's torqued at 80 foot-pounds. Let's do this one for star pattern. Oh, almost. All right, 80 foot-pounds. Alright, that one's good. And lastly, this one. You know, it doesn't have to be exactly 80, it could be plus or minus 3 or 2. Okay, so all 5 of these are torqued to about 80 foot-pounds. Oh. There we go. Alright. Alright, let's do on this side. And lastly, the lock one. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go back around and double check. Okay. Okay. See, this one is good. This is the reason that why you double check. This one still needs a bit more tightening. There we go. Okay. And there we go. All 10 of our lug nuts are torqued properly, and we should be good to go. Okay. Now that's all that's left to do, is go in the car and pump the brakes. Okay, let's turn on the car and pump the brakes. Alright. Just pump the brakes a few times. Yeah, so the first time you do this, the brakes are going to feel kind of soft. You want to keep pumping until they feel hard. And right now it still feels kind of soft. Yeah, and it's getting there. Alright. This should be good to go. It feels more springy, is a good way to describe it. Okay. So, of course, before you go on the highway, maybe you want to do a bit of test drives around the neighborhood just to make sure your brakes are working properly. Big mistake to go on the highway without checking your brakes. That actually did happen to one of my uncles. They replaced their brakes and they forgot to actually pump the brakes, and so when they were reversing out of the driveway, their brakes didn't work properly. And they almost got in a crash. So yeah, that's the last clip. I'm not sure what the order is. Maybe next we'll have, actually no, this will be the last clip because this is the taken out. But anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Peace. Where did I really go? As I mentioned before, I would talk about jacking up the car. And usually, on a car like this, you would place the jack stand all the way in the back there, right under the metal. And the hydraulic jack right here, under this piece of metal. And you can see another angle on this side. You know, typically you'd want to place the jack stand on the outside and have the jack on the inside, but it's a bit harder to jack it while the hydraulic jack's on the inside. So this is why we have it this way. And also one more point of safety is to put a brick behind the back of the wheel, with this as a safety choke. And as for taking the wheel off, if you don't have an impact driver, what you want to do is before you actually jack the car up, you want to take off all the bolts. And then you want to jack the car up. The reason why is so that the tire doesn't spin while you take out the bolts. But if you do have an impact driver, you just take it, and you take out, the nuts. have a locking nut, like we do, which you'll need a special socket for. Which, let's get that on there. There we go. Our locking nut is taken out. Do the same on this side. There we go. Alright, since it's raining, we're gonna have to continue this later. We'll be back. Okay, the rain stopped, so now we can take the tires off. And if they don't come off easily, then get a mallet and knock them. Or, well, I don't really want to ruin my dad's rims, so I'm going to knock them. Alright, set that aside. Whew. So that's how to take off the wheels.
O sol está sempre ardendo, já faz tempo que não chove.